WoW Classic feels so good. Back here again! Ha! Ooh, nice polygons. Much pixels. So, wow. Man, I farmed Westfall back in the day. I was like, what, 16? Ever since I slayed demons and Illidan, slayed the Lich King. Could have just done this though. Popped some Dragon Zits, fought a present war chief, fought the future version of the present war chief back in the past, fought the past version of the past war chief in the past before he became the future war chief of the horde in the past, slayed demons again and made buddies with Illidan, left Illidan to die because the plot would have been too convoluted to have him back on Azeroth, fighting more war chiefs. Clearly, Westfall will be a walk in the park. At least I get to play with some ladies. Hello, darling. They call me Jack Hammer, back on the broken shore. Oh, don't go. Wow, this time travel back to 14 years ago really slows down my attack animations. No, stop. I think the past is not yet ready for my magnificent self. Back to Island Expeditions. Hello, you beautiful bastards. How are you today? Hope you are having an amazing week. I sure as hell am, because I get to experience nostalgia in its moist form. Ooh, so good. Here we are on the classic server, the Blizzcon demo edition, where I played a few hours for the sake of the good old days, and it's all coming back to me. Sweet, sweet pain. Ooh. Let's have a discussion, shall we? About the classic server, of course. And let's start with a few questions being asked at BlizzCon just to get them out of the way and to clarify some things that you might have been wondering. If you are playing the demo or played it during BlizzCon, you might have noticed multiple servers and some sharding going. And if you didn't know, sharding is when one man and another man. Sharding basically refers to an instance version of the server where some people cannot interact with others to avoid server lag. Eon confirmed a version of this will be present at the launch of the classic server, since they plan, at least from what I have understood, to only have one server. Fair enough, we don't know how many people want to play classic or how many people will be playing classic for more than a few weeks or months. Which is what Eon has said. The reason there is one server is because people will most likely drop off after some time, and that can pose population problems if there are multiple servers. And since the release of the server will bring with itself hype and a big influx of people, having 200 people in Crossroads is, well, kinda like this. Also, another point that was made was with the future of this project. Will it evolve into a TBC server? Before going deeper inside the issue, I would like to say that the dearest spirit of WoW to my heart will be TBC. That's when I really started to play the game, played PvE and PvP with at least a modicum of interest and skill, and really TBC was the breakpoint for the evolution of WoW into a very, very good game. Vanilla feels a little bit all over the place. The story is there if you look for it, the grind was made obviously apparent, and the quests pretty much involved you killing stuff over and over again. In TBC we had the first vehicle quest, right? That's how I remember Hellfire Peninsula though. We had proper storylines, proper endgame progression, and of course, arenas, boys, come on! Ah, the good old SL Warlock PvP, or why drinking battery acid was a much more fun activity. But I'm getting sidetracked. Yes, will there be a TBC server? Maybe Wrath and so forth? Eon said that their plan was to recreate the classic experience, probably after we bugged them so much. Eon also said they will do what feels good and natural for the game itself, which means they are not ruling out TBC. But here's where my experience and highly sought after opinion comes in. What will be next then? Will we see a new server every few years with the past expansion we used to play? Will they replace the previous server? Will it run as a separate client? Will we transfer characters? Will we have two game clients with BfA running simultaneously on both, because, let's be honest, BfA will be the last expansion that will survive. The number of people that like vanilla and the number of people that will religiously play vanilla is very different, and I think the devs know this. Now let's talk about the actual classic server and how it holds up. Well, it's holding up. I've played both the Alliance and the Horde versions of the server, and it's pretty much what I remember vanilla to be. As a quick summary, before we talk about what the overall feel is, it took me over 20 minutes to finish 2 quests in the same zone, as opposed to what, 5 minutes it takes today? 15 minutes difference is a small number, but when you paint a bigger picture, it's pretty safe to say it takes you 4 times as much time to finish quests back in Classic. But playing after such a long time and from Battle for Azeroth Looking Glass, I've managed to see a few things that I will be talking about. You probably heard this before, but in Classic WoW you are weak, and man, how weak you are. If you play a mana spending class, you have to drink every 1 or 2 pulls, which consist of 1 of 2 mobs maximum. I managed to pull 3 to 4 on my paladin and survived by using bops, lay on hands, stuns, of which the cooldown is so long I can only do this once per quest or once every 60 minutes or so, especially for lay on hands. Being so weak, however, adds some aspect to the game that makes it enjoyable. One, you cannot slack or use spells inefficiently, at least if you want to actually finish the quest before the server reset. You essentially have to use your resources as efficiently as possible. On my paladin, I had to seal swap for minimum mana consumption so that I can kill a mob with 1 less swing or 1 less spell cast. The same goes for the warrior. I had to swap stances for certain abilities, and can we all appreciate and pay our respect to stances, please? Thank you. I swapped gear mid-fight to deal with extra stuff that was pulled along the way and such. This methodical gameplay is a lot more enjoyable than I remember, probably because back then I wasn't using it since everyone was very bad in vanilla, me included. But with today's gaming skills and knowledge, I'm able to take advantage of things that I couldn't see back then. So yeah, this type of gameplay is very enjoyable for me. Second, let's talk about your overall strength as a character. You are weak in Classic, so weak that you need other people for certain quests. You need to open your spellbook and look for that one skill that can help you deal with the situation, and need to check your profession for a sharpening stone that might help you kill a group that much faster. That means that socializing was a much more preeminent factor, and leveling your profession would give you a 1-up over everyone else. As such, you essentially had to be more resourceful. Or maybe you didn't have to be, but if you were, your life would have been easier, your progress and general questing more efficient. Third, and of course this was not available on the Classic demo, but I know, okay? Professions were a bit more versatile. Granted, we do have versatile things we can craft today, but maybe not as helpful or maybe not to the same degree. One example would be blacksmithing. You constantly make gear that is pretty much on par with the toughest dungeon you can do, and this applies to all crafting professions. But you also make stuff for other professions that they need to use to progress on their own terms. So everything was a bit more codependent on each other, which again strengthens the social aspect of the game and makes you be more involved in the actual world and not just go on your one-man solo cruise and occasionally press a button to add party members with whom you barely exchange a few words. And let's not start talking about tailoring for bags, engineering for ammos and guns, etc, etc. The fourth aspect I want to talk about is the actual combat, or rather the flow of combat. Everything is slower and a bit more methodical, where now you have a rotation to maximize the speed at which you kill stuff. In Classic, you have maybe not a rotation, but certain abilities that you have to use to actually kill your enemy. You will auto-attack a lot, or, flick your wand if you're lucky enough to have one. Playing the Warlock, I had to switch to wands when out of mana, since Life Tap, at least at level 15, gave back very little mana, its downside being combated by using Drain Life, which again costs mana. Another aspect of the gameplay was how quests were. Besides WoW, I didn't play other MMOs at the time to compare, so I'm not sure if this was a general gameplay back then, but the quests were made so you can grind a lot of mobs. Drop chance for leather bandanas was low enough that by the time I got all of them, I got enough XP to reliably go to the next quest and smoothly exhaust all of the zone's quests before moving on to the next zone. Overall, quests were not enough to level through a zone. Most of the time, especially for Alliance at this point in the game, you had to go to Red Ridge Mountains for a few quests, maybe even Duskwood. I actually timed myself, without speedrunning it though, and it took me 20 minutes to finish the first Defias killing quest that is accompanied by the Gather 15 Bandanas quest. And this is also with me knowing where they are and maybe an above average route through the zone to reliably kill them all. Let's talk about progression, leveling, and how this is different compared to the live game, in this instance to BfA. Leveling was clearly slower, but that's because we had 60 levels to go through before getting to endgame. They cannot add 60 more levels with each expansion, and with this the same amount of content, zones, quests, etc., although they did a pretty good job of it. In RPGs, you have a specific progression which makes up the main charm of the game genre. Without a sense of progression, an RPG isn't really an RPG. Today, that progression is represented by the eye level of your character, the number of Mythic Plus you clear each week, the raid bosses you downed, or the rating gained in arenas and RBGs. In Classic, however, the progression is you leveling and aiming for max level. We did indeed have an endgame rating, and, well, PvP in terms of a few battlegrounds. Leveling your character in Classic wasn't just you getting to max, you had to level your professions, your weapon skills, and so on. Whatever strength your character gained from quests and dungeons past level 40 and level 30 in some cases would take you through the max level content, so it didn't feel like a waste to do an extra Stratholme run or get that Blackrock Death's mail set. As opposed to now, where, like Ian accurately admitted, you have 2 levels to your character, level 120 and not level 120. Right now, and this has been the case for pretty much every expansion since TBC, what you do before getting max level doesn't really matter. The first item you get from max level content surpasses any item you struggled in getting in anything you did prior. So why bother struggling to do an extra dungeon before reaching max? You aren't struggling anymore, and this is what was lost over the years, the sense of progression that rewarded your efforts for pretty much 100% of your playthrough from level 1 to max. But I might be wrong, so feel free to let me know. Lastly, I want to talk about an aspect of the game that maybe not a lot of people care for, but in my opinion is what created our community, or one of the things that created it, and that was the immersion factor. The thing that lets you get lost into the world, care for the world, and make you feel you are part of it. Which is why we care for the game. We think of the game, although indirectly, as ours. And come on, don't tell me I'm wrong. Look deep inside you and you will see that a part of you that fell in love with the Elwyn Forest music, the part of you that liked Hammett sending you on tigers and raptors hunting sprees. A major part of what influenced the immersion factor is the lack of mounted travel, or the reduced amount of it. Mounts were hard to come by, and most of the time you would go for multiple levels past the point where it would be available without the mount, because you simply couldn't afford it, and we didn't have flying. What this meant was you had to walk a lot, like a lot. Because walking from place to place was such a major factor, even after you got your mount, you would take in the surroundings and appreciate the environment. You would consider stopping to a quest hub, even if it wasn't on your planned route. Spend more time in a specific zone. Fast mounting and fast mounting available soon takes away from this aspect, and yeah, I know, after a while you've seen everything, you cannot actually just walk the same zone and route hundreds of times. But that doesn't mean that what I said is not true. Vanilla was overall inconvenient, but in its inconvenience we found each other, we helped each other, because the world itself was a much harsher place to live in. Thank you for watching the video, guys, and I know this is my subjective and biased opinion, so feel free to let me know what your thoughts are. What are your favorite memories, and why is Classic better than current WoW?